The family gathering turned into a courtroom when I hit play on the evidence reel while my parents called me useless. My sister laughed into the microphone. She knows it. But she didn't know what I'd prepared behind her back. They thought the beach house was family property, time to collect tuition for their audacity. The projector hummed to life, and 73 relatives watched their entitlement crumble in high definition. Every trespass, every broken lock, every "but we're family" excuse documented, time-stamped, and about to be served with legal papers by the deputies waiting outside. My name is Lauren Pierce, and I've saved 37 lives in my career as an EMT with North Shore Crisis Response. But according to my family, I'm the useless one, the daughter who chose sirens over stock portfolios, compression wounds over country clubs. At 34, I've held dying hands at 3:15 a.m. Sarah performed CPR in hurricane winds, and once delivered twins in the back of our ambulance during a blackout. Yet when my grandmother June's will was read last March, naming me sole heir to her Harbor Ridge cottage, my mother Elaine's first words were, "Why would she waste it on you?" The cottage sits on a private strip of Maine coastline where the Atlantic crashes against granite cliffs and salt roses bloom despite the harsh winds. Built in 1952, its cedar shingles have weathered to silver gray, and the wraparound porch still holds the Adirondack chairs where Grandma June taught me to read tide charts and identify ships by their lights. The house smells like sea-soaked wood and lavender. She planted bushes by every window to keep the ghosts honest, she'd say. 4 bedrooms, a stone fireplace that draws perfectly, and a view of Pemaquid Light blinking its automated warning every 6 seconds through the fog. The lawyer, a soft-spoken man from Rockport, had cleared his throat before reading June's handwritten note attached to the deed, "To my granddaughter Lauren, because she understands value, not just price, because she knows that some things are meant to be kept, not borrowed." My father Mark had shifted in his leather chair, his real estate developer's mind already calculating square footage and seasonal rental potential. My older sister Savannah, who manages hedge funds and owns 3 properties she's never lived in, had actually laughed. "Come on, Lauren barely uses anything. She'll share." Right, Lauren. The thing about my family is they've always operated on a different economy, one where my belongings were community property, but theirs were sacred. My college laptop disappeared during Thanksgiving my senior year, reappearing in Cousin Brianna's dorm room. "I needed it more," she'd explained, like need was something you could weigh on her personal scale. My leather jacket from my 21st birthday, gone after a family barbecue, later spotted on my Aunt Lydia's Instagram from her Napa trip. "I didn't think you'd mind," she'd said. "You never dress up anyway." They took my time. 2. Called at 2 a.m. for rides home from bars, knowing I'd be awake from my night shifts. Demanded I use my medical training to check their kids' scraped knees at every gathering, then mocked me for playing doctor when I suggested actual medical attention for Cousin Derek's obvious concussion. "See, this is why June felt sorry for her," Elaine had whispered to her sister at the funeral, loud enough for me to hear over the organ music. But June hadn't felt sorry for me. She'd seen me. Summer of 2019, when everyone else was touring Europe or renovating kitchens. I'd spent 2 months at the cottage helping her recover from hip surgery. We'd watched the sunrise from her bedroom window, counted fishing boats heading out in the pre-dawn darkness, shared silence that felt like conversation. She'd told me about my grandfather's affairs, about the son she'd lost before my father was born, about the nights she'd stood at the tide line considering walking in and never stopping. "This house saved me," she'd said one morning, her fingers tracing the window frames painted over imperfections. "It's the only thing in this family that stays still while everything else takes and takes and takes." I understood. In my ambulance, racing through red lights with someone's heart stopping under my hands, I existed in a space where pretense died and only truth remained. The cottage was like that, honest in its stillness, its boundaries clear where water met stone. No family politics could change the tide schedule. No amount of Savannah's condescension could alter the lighthouse's rhythm. But my family saw an asset being wasted on the wrong daughter, the one who'd chosen public service over private wealth, who drove a 10-year-old Toyota instead of a Tesla, who spent her vacation days volunteering with disaster relief instead of skiing in Aspen. They couldn't fathom that June had left me the cottage not despite these choices, but because of them. I was the only one who'd never asked her for money, never eyed her jewelry at Christmas dinner, never mentioned how much beachfront property was worth these days. The first seeds of their plan sprouted in the family group chat 2 weeks after probate closed. Innocent enough Brianna asking about Memorial Day weekend, Derek wondering if the cottage had been opened up for summer. Then Elaine, master of passive-aggressive orchestration, typing, "We should really discuss a family schedule. It's what June would have wanted." No, I'd thought, staring at my phone screen in the break room between emergency calls. June had wanted me to have a place where the takings stopped, where the answer could just be no. But I'd underestimated how deep their entitlement ran, how my inheritance had upset their careful hierarchy where I was supposed to remain the useful but unimportant youngest daughter, always available, never quite valued. The cottage had disturbed that balance. They were about to learn that saving lives teaches you about boundaries, about what can and cannot be revived, about when to push and when to stop, about the difference between helping and enabling. And sometimes, it teaches you that the only way to stop the bleeding is to cut deep and cauterize the wound. The group chat explosion happened on a Tuesday at 11:43 a.m. while I was restocking the ambulance after a cardiac call. My phone buzzed against the metal supply shelf once, twice, then a continuous vibration that meant the family had found a new target. Brianna had opened with a photo of her packed SUV. "Beach house, here we come. Set up the kids' rooms for July 4th week," before I could type a response. The messages cascaded. Derek, dibs on the master for the following weekend. Aunt Lydia, already invited my book club for the 3rd week. Hope that's okay. Savannah, I'll need it August 1 to 15 for client entertainment. Sending my assistant to stock the bar Thursday. Then my mother, wielding her authority like a gavel. "So glad we're all coordinating, Lauren. You can work anywhere with that laptop, so just pick whatever dates are left. Family shares." I stood in the supply closet, surrounded by boxes of gauze and IV bags, reading their casual colonization of my inheritance. They'd even created a shared Google Calendar titled Family Beach Schedule 2024, with my cottage address listed as the location. 17 dates already blocked off. My name appeared nowhere except as the assumed provider of this sudden communal property. My partner Jake glanced in. "You okay? You look like someone just called a code." "Family," I said. "Ah, worse than a code." I started typing. "The cottage is my private property. It's not available for family use without my explicit invitation. I have maintenance scheduled throughout the summer and—" Savannah interrupted before I could finish. "Don't be difficult. Lauren, you use it. What? 3 weekends a year. This is exactly why Grandma should have left it to someone who understands sharing." Sharing. The word they'd weaponized since childhood. Sharing meant my Halloween candy redistributed to cousins who'd eaten theirs too fast. Sharing meant my babysitting money in Mom's purse because family helps family. Sharing meant my boundaries were suggestions, but theirs were law. Mark, my father, who'd spoken maybe 40 words to me since Christmas, suddenly appeared in the chat. "Lauren, your mother and I are disappointed. We raised you better than this selfishness." The word hit like a slap. Selfish. Me, who'd driven Elaine to every chemotherapy appointment during her breast cancer scare. Who'd covered Savannah's wedding rehearsal dinner when her credit card mysteriously declined. Who'd never asked for a penny from any of them, even when I was eating ramen between EMT training shifts. I typed back, "The cottage is not communal property. I'll be installing security cameras this week. Anyone attempting to enter without permission will be trespassing." The chat exploded. 63 messages in 4 minutes. Words like ungrateful and spiteful and "who do you think you are?" filled my screen. Brianna actually typed, "June is rolling in her grave at your greed." June, who'd pressed the deed into my hands a month before she died, saying, "They'll come for it. Stand your ground." My mother called. I didn't answer. She called again. then Savannah, then Mark. 12 missed calls while I stood in that supply closet. My hands steady the same hands that had held pressure on a severed artery last week without shaking. Finally, I typed, "I'm changing the locks tomorrow. Any existing keys will no longer work. Do not attempt to access the property." Savannah's response was immediate. "You can't do that. Mom and Dad have had keys for 30 years. Had, I corrected. That's when Brianna made her declaration. The one that would become evidence item number 1. "Look, we're coming July 4th whether you like it or not. The cottage is a family place. Always has been. Your little power trip doesn't change that. Already told the kids about the fireworks on the beach." 97 likes on her message. My extended family forming ranks against me, hearts and thumbs-up emoticons becoming tiny weapons of endorsement. Even my second cousin from California, who'd never set foot in Maine, added I screenshot everything. Then I called Harrison Cho at Shoreline and Bray, the law firm June had used. "I need to establish clear property boundaries," I said, "and I need to know my options when those boundaries are violated." "Expecting trouble?" he asked. "It's already started." That evening, I drove to the cottage. The summer sun was setting behind Pemaquid Light, painting the granite cliffs gold and pink. Inside, everything still smelled like June, her lavender soap, the Cuban coffee she'd imported monthly, the faint medicinal scent of her arthritis cream. Her reading glasses sat on the kitchen counter next to a grocery list in her handwriting, "Bread, butter, those crackers Lauren likes." I walked through each room, seeing it through my family's eyes. They saw rental income, Instagram backgrounds, free vacation housing. They saw dollar signs where I saw June teaching me to make blueberry jam, her hands purple-stained and patient. They saw property where I saw the only place in the world where I didn't have to be useful to be valued. My phone buzzed. Another chat message from Elaine. "We need to have a family meeting about your attitude. This Saturday, 2 p.m. Don't make us come to you." I typed back, "I'll be at work. Saving lives. You know, being useful." Then I muted the chat, called a locksmith for the next morning, and sat on June's porch watching the lighthouse beams sweep across the darkening water. 6 seconds of light, 6 seconds of dark, reliable, predictable, honest. They thought I'd cave like I always had, the perpetual youngest daughter who could be guilted into compliance. They didn't understand that every day. I made decisions that meant life or death. I knew how to triage, how to prioritize, how to cut away what was killing the patient. And sometimes, the thing killing the patient was family. The security system alert hit my phone at 2:17 p.m. on July 3rd. I was halfway through documenting a trauma call when the notification popped up, "Motion detected. Multiple individuals at front entrance." The live feed showed 3 vehicles in my driveway, Brianna's white Escalade, Derek's BMW, and Aunt Lydia's Range Rover. They'd arrived a day early, probably thinking they'd catch me off guard. I watched Brianna march to the front door with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, her 3 kids trailing behind with beach bags and tablets. She tried her key. Nothing. Tried again, jiggling it harder. Then Derek appeared in frame, shouldering past her to attempt his copy. When that failed, they began the treasure hunt, lifting the doormat, checking under flower pots, running their hands along the door frame. "Check the fake rock," Lydia called out, and I watched my cousin paw through June's carefully maintained garden bed, tossing aside real stones in search of the hidden spare that no longer existed. Then they tried the windows. First the kitchen, where Derek actually produced a credit card and began working it along the frame. The new locks I'd installed held firm. Brianna's oldest kid, maybe 11, was boosted up to try the bathroom window while Lydia documented everything on her phone, probably for their group chat. "Lauren's being ridiculous," I could hear her saying through the audio feed. "We're family." That word again, family, as if DNA was a skeleton key to my life. I activated the 2-way speaker. "You're trespassing on private property. Leave immediately, or I'll contact law enforcement." They froze. Looking around for cameras, they hadn't noticed small, weatherproof units tucked under eaves and hidden in the new porch lights. Brianna found one and flipped it off. "Lauren, stop this nonsense!" She snapped at the camera. "The kids have been looking forward to this for weeks. You're traumatizing them with this behavior." Traumatizing. Her kids who were currently watching their parents attempt breaking and entering. "You have 60 seconds to leave before I call the sheriff," I said through the speaker. "You wouldn't dare," Derek said, but he was already backing toward his car. 50 seconds. That's when I heard another voice, unexpected but welcome. "Everything all right here?" Mr. Calder, my nearest neighbor, had walked over from his property line. 78 years old, former Navy, still did his own roof repairs. He'd loved June, brought her tomatoes every summer. "We're family," Lydia explained, using that tone people employed with the elderly, loud and slow. "There's been a misunderstanding about keys." "No misunderstanding," Mr. Calder said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded ships. "Ms. Pierce sent a certified letter to all neighbors about trespassers. Said to call the sheriff if we saw anyone trying to enter without her present, even provided photos." He pulled out his phone, comparing the screen to the group. "Yep, you're all on the list." Brianna's face went scarlet. "She sent our photos to strangers." "Neighbors aren't strangers," Mr. Calder corrected. "And property rights aren't suggestions. You folks best move along." I triggered the floodlights military-grade LEDs I'd installed the week before. In the middle of the afternoon, they turned the lawn into a spotlight stage. Then came the alarm, not the smoke detector beep they might expect, but a marine foghorn I'd specially ordered. The sound rolled across the coastline like a war cry. Brianna's youngest started crying. Derek covered his ears. 2 more neighbors emerged from their houses, phones in hand. Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down was already filming. 30 seconds, I announced. They scattered like startled gulls. Brianna yanking her children toward the Escalade, screaming something about lawyers. Derek peeling out so fast he clipped June's mailbox. Lydia in the Range Rover, on her phone before she'd even started the engine, no doubt reporting to the family tribunal. But the best part was Savannah's text that arrived minutes later. She'd been waiting down the road as backup and watched the whole exodus. "You've lost your mind," she wrote. "Calling the cops on family mom and dad are going to deal with you." I saved the security footage to 3 different cloud services, then called Harrison at the law firm. They tried to break in, credit cards and window frames. The whole thing. It's all recorded. "Perfect," he said. "We'll add attempted breaking and entering to the cease and desist letters. If they come back, we can file for restraining orders." That evening, the family group chat became a war room. A cousin in Boston called me psychotic. An uncle in Florida suggested I needed professional help. My mother posted a long message about how June had wanted the cottage to bring family together, not tear it apart, a fiction she'd invented to support her narrative. But then something unexpected happened. June's sister, my great-aunt Margaret, whom I barely knew, posted, "June told me exactly why she left the cottage to Lauren. She said Lauren was the only one who never took anything from her while she was alive, so she'd earned the right to say no once she was dead." The chat went silent for exactly 3 minutes. Then my father wrote, "Margaret doesn't know the whole situation." But Margaret wasn't done. "I know enough. I know about the jewelry you all borrowed from June's bedroom during her surgery. I know about the antique clock that mysteriously disappeared during her 70th birthday. I know about the bonds you convinced her to cash out for Savannah's wedding. Lauren never took a penny." I sat in my apartment, watching the chat explode and implode, alliances forming and breaking, but I wasn't looking at my phone anymore. I was looking at the folder Harrison had prepared, no trespass orders for every family member who'd participated in today's attempted entry. Security footage burned to USB drives. Cease and desist letters ready to mail. They'd called my bluff. Showed up despite my warnings. Tried to break into my home. Traumatized children by making them accomplices to attempted burglary. They'd proven they saw my boundaries as challenges to overcome, not lines to respect. Mr. Calder texted me a photo he'd taken my 3 relatives fleeing the property while the foghorn wailed and lights blazed. "Your grandmother would be proud," he wrote. "She always said you had steel in your spine, just needed the right moment to show it." The right moment. I looked at the date. 2 days until the family's big summer gathering at Seafarer Banquet Hall. The one Elaine had been planning since January, where the entire extended family would gather to celebrate my parents' 40th anniversary. Perfect timing for a presentation about property rights and consequences. The evidence folder on my laptop had grown to 47 gigabytes by July 5th. Security footage, screenshots, audio recordings, a digital monument to my family's entitlement. I sat in my apartment at 120A, methodically organizing files while my EMT uniform dried on the balcony, still smelling of antiseptic from a rough shift. Harrison had been thorough. The demand letters were works of art citing Maine Revised Statutes Title 17A, Section 402 for criminal trespass, Section 401 for burglary, plus civil liabilities for property damage. Brianna's kids trampling June's salt rose garden alone totaled $800 in landscape restoration. The broken mailbox Derek hit $450. The scratches on the window frame from his credit card attempt $1,200 for professional repair to maintain historical integrity. But the real discovery came when I deep dived into the group chat archives. 2 years of messages I'd muted but never deleted, now becoming evidence. Savannah discussing how to convince June to add family members to the deed. Mark suggesting they could claim adverse possession if they used it enough. Elaine's message from 3 months before June died, "Just be patient. Old people change their minds about wills all the time." They'd been circling June like vultures, and she'd known. No wonder she'd handwritten that note to me about understanding value versus price. I called Harrison at a reasonable hour, 8 a.m. sharp. "I need process servers for the anniversary party," I said. "Every single person who participated in the attempted break-in, plus my parents for conspiracy to commit trespass." "That's quite the statement," he said carefully. "Family events can be complicated for service." They made it public when they posted about it on Facebook. Seafarer Banquet Hall, July 7th, 7 p.m., open bar until 10. They even listed who's attending. "And you're certain you want to escalate this dramatically?" I thought about every family gathering where my belongings disappeared, every guilt trip about being selfish with my time, my money, my life, every message in that chat calling me useless, difficult, ungrateful. They escalated when they tried to break into my home. I'm just responding with appropriate documentation. The real gold mine came from an unexpected source, my cousin Tyler, Lydia's son, who'd stayed out of the family drama. He called me that afternoon. "Hey, Lauren, heads up," he said. "My mom had too much wine last night and admitted something. Your mom has had copies of June's keys this whole time. Like, since the 80s. She and my mom have been going to the cottage for years when June was traveling, treating it like their personal vacation spot. There's a whole group chat from before June died where they discussed their cottage weeks while she was in Florida visiting friends. Can you screenshot that chat? Already did. Sending now. Lauren. They even took stuff. Mom has June's antique lighthouse lamp in her dining room. Said June wouldn't miss it." The screenshots arrived. Dated conversations about borrowing the cottage, complete with photos of my relatives lounging on June's porch, using her dishes, sleeping in her beds, all while she was alive and unaware. The theft went beyond keys. They'd been stealing her trust for decades. I forwarded everything to Harrison, then called my security company to upgrade the cottage system. Cameras with cloud storage, motion sensors, smart locks that logged every entry attempt, even pressure sensors under the welcome mat. Fort Knox had nothing on what I was building. Then I started on the presentation for the anniversary party. The video was simple but devastating. A timeline of trespass, starting with screenshots of the original chat messages claiming the cottage. Cut to security footage of the break-in attempt Derek with his credit card, the child at the window, Brianna's middle finger to the camera. Audio of them discussing getting in another way after I'd warned them to leave. Then the legal documentation copies of the demand letters, the criminal trespass statutes, the bills for damages. The masterpiece was the side-by-side comparison Savannah's Facebook post about family traditions at our beach house next to the legal deed showing my sole ownership. Brianna's chat message about Lauren doesn't deserve it next to June's handwritten note about why she'd left it to me. My father saying, "We're disappointed in your selfishness," next to the screenshots of them using June's cottage without permission for years. I titled it, "Understanding Boundaries, a Legal Presentation," but I needed one more thing proof that they'd been planning to try again. So I sent a message to the family chat. "I'll be at work all day July 7th. Please respect that the cottage remains private property." The responses were immediate and incriminating. Derek, "What she doesn't know won't hurt her." Brianna, "Already found a locksmith who says those smart locks are easy to bypass." Savannah, "I have a lawyer friend who says she can't actually enforce those trespass orders on family." Mark, "Let her throw her tantrum. We'll discuss this at the party like adults." I screenshot everything, adding it to the final slide of my presentation with the caption, "Conspiracy to commit criminal trespass, July 5th, 2024, 9:43 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. The process servers cost extra for evening service, but Harrison found professionals who specialized in difficult serves. Former military, he said, unintimidated by family dynamics or public scenes. Each would carry sealed envelopes with the recipient's name, containing the no trespass orders, demand letters for damages, and cease and desist notices for harassment. I paid for everything from my savings money I'd scraped together over years of overtime shifts and holiday coverage, money my family assumed I didn't have because I drove an old car and lived in a modest apartment. They had no idea I'd been saving for something that mattered the power to say no. The plan was elegant. I'd attend the party like a good daughter, wait for the inevitable public humiliation they'd planned because there was always a speech about how difficult I was, always a joke about the family disappointment. Then, when they felt safest, surrounded by enablers and alcohol, I'd give my own presentation. Harrison made one last suggestion. Document your current relationship with law enforcement. If things go south, you want them predisposed to see you as the victim, not the aggressor. So I visited the sheriff's office, filed official reports about the attempted break-in with the footage, and made sure every deputy on duty knew about the situation. Sheriff Thompson, who'd known June from church, shook his head watching the video. "Your family really tried to break into your inherited property in broad daylight. They don't think laws apply to family. They're about to learn otherwise. We'll have someone nearby during your party, just in case." Everything was set, evidence compiled, legal documents prepared, law enforcement alerted, presentation loaded on multiple USB drives. I even had Mr. Calder on standby as a witness, ready to testify about what he'd seen. They wanted to discuss this like adults at the party perfect. I'd give them the most adult conversation of their lives with legal consequences, financial penalties, and public documentation of their crimes. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it, confident in their numbers, certain of their righteousness, completely unaware that the useless daughter had been taking notes, keeping receipts, and building a case that would end their free ride forever. The Seafarer banquet hall stood like a white ship against the Portland harbor, its windows glowing amber in the evening light. July 7th, 6:45 p.m. I sat in my Toyota, watching relatives stream through the entrance in their cocktail dresses and pressed khakis. The parking lot filled with luxury vehicles, a BMW here, a Mercedes there, my uncle's new Tesla commanding 2 spaces. I'd arrived early to handle the technical setup. The event coordinator, Michelle, had been surprisingly helpful when I'd called ahead. "You're providing the memorial video for your grandmother," she'd asked. "Exactly. My mother requested it, but she's been so busy with party planning. I wanted to surprise her." "How thoughtful. We'll have the projection system ready. The screen drops down right behind the main table." I'd paid the AV technician, Carlos, $300 in cash to ensure perfect execution. "When I give you this signal," I demonstrated a subtle hand raise. "You play the file on this USB. No matter what anyone else says, You play the whole thing. Family drama, he'd asked knowingly. Family documentation. The process servers were already in position too, sitting at the bar like regular patrons. One stationed outside the restrooms, another by the exit. Harrison had sent me their photos so I could identify them. Professional, clean-cut, invisible in a crowd. The sealed envelopes waited in their jacket pockets. Each name typed in bold: Mark Pierce, Elaine Pierce, Savannah Pierce Whitman, Brianna Holt, Derek Lawson, Lydia Lawson. Sheriff Thompson had texted at 6:30. Deputy Martinez is having dinner at the restaurant next door. Call if needed. I changed in my car, slipping on the one decent dress I owned, navy blue. Funeral appropriate, court appropriate. The kind of outfit that said respectful daughter, but could also say credible witness. I pinned my EMT certification badge inside my purse, a small reminder of who I really was beneath the family theater. Inside, the hall bloomed with white roses and gold ribbons. Elaine had spent $15,000 on this party, I knew, because she'd complained about the cost in the family chat while simultaneously suggesting I was selfish for not contributing. A jazz quartet played standards in the corner. The bar sparkled with top-shelf bottles. A massive photo collage documented my parents' 40 years together, carefully curated to show prosperity and perfection. Lauren. My mother's voice cut through the cocktail chatter. She wore silver sequins that caught the light like fish scales. You came. I wasn't sure you'd manage to get off work. I switched shifts, I said. Wouldn't miss it. Her smile was razor thin. How nice. Your sister has been looking for you. Something about discussing the cottage situation reasonably. The cottage situation, as if my property was a problem to be solved by committee. I found my assigned seat back corner, table 12, with distant relatives and plus ones. Savannah had made the seating chart. Naturally. She'd placed herself at table 1, right beside the podium where speeches would happen. I noticed the projection screen already in place behind her. Carlos stationed at the AV booth, giving me a subtle thumbs up. Lauren. Brianna materialized with a champagne flute, her voice honeyed with fake warmth. We need to talk about July 4th. The kids were devastated. You really hurt them with that stunt. Breaking and entering isn't a stunt, I said quietly. It's a crime. Her smile flickered. See, this is why everyone thinks you're... She caught herself. We're family. Family doesn't threaten each other with police. Family doesn't try to break into each other's homes. She left in a huff, probably to report my attitude to the others. I watched her join a cluster near the bar. Derek, Lydia, 2 aunts, 3 cousins, all glancing my way with practiced disdain, planning their intervention, no doubt. Dinner was surf and turf, which half the room photographed for Instagram. The speeches began with dessert. My uncle talked about Mark's business acumen. Savannah delivered a rehearsed tribute to family values that several guests filmed. Then Elaine stood, tapping her champagne glass with a butter knife until the room quieted. 40 years, she began, her voice carrying that perfect hostess pitch. 40 years of building a family, a legacy, a tradition of togetherness. She paused, eyes finding me in the back. Of course, not everyone appreciates what we've built. Some people think property matters more than people. Some people choose selfishness over sharing. Scattered murmurs of agreement. My father stood beside her, nodding like a judge confirming a verdict. We've always taught our daughters to share. Elaine continued, though clearly. Some lessons didn't take. When someone hoards what should be communal, when they threaten family with legal action, when they value deeds over blood. She raised her glass higher. Well, that person shows who they really are. Useless to the family unit. That was my cue. I stood. I'd like to say something. Heads turned. Elaine's smile froze. I've prepared something special for this anniversary, I said, walking toward the front. A presentation about family values. Mom, you always said actions speak louder than words. So I've documented our family's actions. I raised my hand. Carlos hit play. The screen illuminated with the title, Understanding Boundaries, a Legal Documentation. The first slide, screenshots of the family chat. Brianna declaring they'd use my cottage regardless of my wishes. Time-stamped, highlighted. The second slide, security footage of Derek trying to break in with a credit card while Brianna's child attempted the window. The date and time burned into the corner. July 3rd, 2024, 2:17 p.m. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone dropped a glass. The third slide, split screen. Left side, Elaine's Facebook post about our family cottage where memories are made. Right side, the legal deed in my name only. June's handwritten note circled in red, because Lauren understands value, not just price. Turn it off, Mark shouted, but Carlos kept playing. Fourth slide, the invoice for damages, garden restoration, mailbox replacement, window repair. Total to $450. Then the criminal statute numbers for trespassing and attempted burglary. Fifth slide. Tyler's leaked screenshots years of my mother and aunt discussing using June's cottage without permission while she was alive. The stolen lighthouse lamp circled in one photo, sitting in Lydia's dining room. The room erupted, chairs scraped, voices rose, but the presentation kept rolling, evidence mounting, the truth playing out in undeniable resolution on a screen too large to ignore. The final slide. That morning's chat messages about bypassing my security system, planning another break-in, Derek saying, "What she doesn't know won't hurt her." Then fade to black except for 3 words, "She knows now." The lights came up. The room sat in stunned silence. 143 guests staring at my family's criminal intentions laid bare in Times New Roman font. That's when the process servers stood up. The silence shattered when Elaine dropped her champagne flute. It hit the parquet floor in an explosion of crystal and Dom Perignon, the sound sharp as a gunshot in the stunned quiet. My mother's face had drained of color, her silver sequins trembling as she gripped the podium. "How dare you?" she whispered into the microphone, but the whisper carried to every corner of the room. "How dare you embarrass us like this?" Embarrass. I stepped closer to the podium, my voice steady. Years of talking to panicked families in emergency rooms had taught me to project calm while chaos erupted. "You mean document. You stood here 60 seconds ago calling me useless to our entire family, in front of everyone we know." Savannah shot up from her seat, her perfect composure cracking. "Turn that projector off. Now." Carlos, bless him, didn't even glance her way. "You want to talk about useless?" I continued, pulling the microphone from its stand. "I've saved 37 lives in my career. Last Tuesday, I resuscitated a 4-year-old who drowned in a pool. Yesterday, I held a teenager's skull together until we reached the hospital. But in this family, I'm useless because I won't hand over my legal property for your vacation convenience." "It's June's cottage," Brianna shouted from table 3. "It belongs to all of us." June left it to me, legally, specifically, with a handwritten note explaining why. I clicked to return to that slide, June's words magnified across the screen. "Because I never stole from her while she was alive. Unlike some people in this room who have her lighthouse lamp in their dining room." Lydia's face went scarlet. "That was a gift." "Really, should we call June's estate lawyer to verify that he's on speed dial?" Mark finally found his voice, using his real estate developer boom that usually ended discussions. "Lauren, stop this immediately. This is a family matter." "No," I cut him off. "Breaking and entering is a criminal matter. Theft is a legal matter, and conspiracy to commit trespass." I clicked to the final slide again. Their messages about planning another break-in is a prosecutable matter. That's when someone in the back started laughing. Great Aunt Margaret, June's sister, raised her gin and tonic in a mock toast. Finally, someone in this family grew a spine. "Margaret, don't encourage her," Elaine hissed. "Encourage her. I'm applauding her." Margaret stood, Surprisingly steady for 83. You vultures picked June's life clean for years, borrowed money you never repaid, took gifts she never offered, used her cottage like a timeshare while she paid the maintenance. And now you're trying to steal from her granddaughter. June would be buying Lauren a drink right now. The process servers began moving through the crowd with practiced precision. The first one reached Derek at the bar. Derek Lawson. Yeah, you've been served. The envelope passed hands before Derek could react. Served what the... He tore it open, his face darkening as he read. A restraining order. Are you fucking kidding me? The second server found Brianna trying to escape toward the bathroom. Brianna Holt. This is for you. She actually tried to refuse it, hands behind her back like a child avoiding medicine. I don't accept that. Ma'am, you've been notified. Dropping it at your feet still counts as service. He placed it on her chair and walked away. Savannah grabbed the microphone from me. Everyone, please, this is just a misunderstanding. My sister is having some kind of breakdown. I'm having clarity, I said, loud enough to carry without amplification. And I'm done being the family doormat who's only valuable when you need medical advice or someone to blame. You vindictive little... Elaine started toward me, but the third process server intercepted her. Elaine Pierce legal documents for you. She slapped his hand away. Don't you dare... That's when Deputy Martinez walked in from the restaurant next door, clearly having heard the commotion. His uniform changed the entire dynamic of the room. Everything all right here? His hand rested casually on his duty belt. Officer, thank God, my father said. My daughter is disrupting our anniversary party with some kind of attack. Martinez looked at the screen, still showing the conspiracy messages, then at the process servers, then at me. Ma'am, are these people being served legal documents? Yes, officer. No trespass orders for my property, plus civil demands for damages incurred during an attempted break-in on July 3rd. An attempted break-in you have documented. I held up my phone. Video evidence already filed with the sheriff's office. Report number 2024-731122. Martinez nodded slowly. Then I'd suggest everyone accept their documents peacefully. Refusing legal service can complicate things. Mark snatched his envelope from the fourth server. This is insane. We're her parents. Parents who tried to break into my legally owned property after I explicitly denied permission, I said. The room had divided like oil and water relatives scrambling away from those being served like trespass was contagious, while others filmed everything on their phones. Tomorrow. This would be on Facebook, Instagram, probably TikTok. The Pierce family empire crumbling in real time, set to jazz standards and the clink of abandoned champagne flutes. You know what? I walked back to the microphone for one last statement. Mom, you were right about one thing. I do know exactly who I am. I'm someone who saves strangers' lives for a living but won't let my own family steal from me anymore. I'm someone who loved Grandma June enough to respect her wishes instead of raiding her estate. And I'm someone who's done apologizing for having boundaries. I looked directly at Savannah, who was standing frozen with her envelope clutched in manicured fingers. You said it yourself. Right into this microphone. She knows it. Yeah, I do know. I know my worth isn't measured by what I let you take from me. The jazz quartet had stopped playing, the musicians packing up their instruments with the urgent efficiency of people avoiding a crime scene. Guests were already heading for exits. Anniversary cake abandoned, expensive wine going flat in glasses. One more thing, I announced. Anyone who receives papers tonight has 72 hours to respond. After that, criminal charges will be filed. And yes, I have enough evidence to make them stick. So maybe think about that before you plan your next family invasion of my property. The microphone feedback squealed as I stepped back to the AV booth. Carlos had already loaded the second presentation, the one I'd hoped I wouldn't need. The nuclear option. But looking at my family's faces, twisted with rage and disbelief, I knew half measures wouldn't end this. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, Since we're all here and the screen's already set up, let me show you exactly what respecting the law looks like. The new title slide appeared, Evidence Portfolio Pierce Family v. Lauren Pierce Case Documentation for Portland District Court. You wouldn't, Savannah breathed. I already have. The first segment was the security footage compilation, not just screenshots now, but full video with audio. The screen showed Derek working his credit card into the window frame, his voice clear. These old locks are garbage. I did this at my ex's place all the time. Brianna's voice followed. Check if she has cameras. Who cares? Derek had responded. We're family. What's she going to do? Arrest us. The timestamp glowed, July 3rd, 2024, 2:21 p.m. Next clip, Brianna instructing her 11-year-old to climb through the bathroom window. Just unlock it from inside. Sweetie, this is our family cottage. Aunt Lauren is just being mean. The child's voice, uncertain. Isn't this breaking in? Not when it's family property. Teaching a minor to commit burglary. The legal statute appeared below the video Maine Criminal Code, Title 17A Section 401. Jesus Christ, Lauren, there are children here, Elaine shrieked. Children you taught to break the law, I responded. Should we discuss that with Child Protective Services? The presentation continued relentlessly. Financial records appeared screenshots from Venmo, bank transfers, text messages about money. All the times I'd covered family expenses with promises of repayment that never came. $32,000 over 8 years. Each transaction timestamped, annotated, prepared for small claims court. Then came the audio recordings. Maine is a single-party consent state. I could legally record conversations I was part of. My mother's voice filled the banquet hall from 3 months ago, captured during a phone call. Lauren won't know what hit her. Once we're established at the cottage, possession is 9/10 of the law. What's she going to do? Drag us out? She doesn't have the spine. My father's voice in the background. Just make sure the locksmith doesn't leave a paper trail. The room had gone cemetery quiet except for the evidence playing out in surround sound. A few relatives were actively recording on their phones now, understanding they were witnessing something unprecedented, the complete immolation of family mythology in real time. The presentation shifted to documents, legal letters from Harrison at Shoreline and Bray, the cease and desist orders, the criminal trespass warnings, each one certified mail, signatures required, receipts documented, a paper trail of warnings ignored, boundaries violated, laws broken. Then, the master stroke a side-by-side comparison of family text messages with Maine criminal statutes. Savannah, we'll get in one way or another. Conspiracy to commit burglary. Derek, I know a guy who can clone keys. Conspiracy to commit breaking and entering. Brianna, she can't watch the cottage 24/7. Criminal threatening. Mark, take what we need, deal with consequences later. Conspiracy to commit theft. This is entrapment, Mark shouted. No, Deputy Martinez said from his position by the door. Entrapment requires law enforcement inducement. This is just documentation. The final section began June's records. Her own diary entries, scanned and authenticated by her estate lawyer. Entry after entry about family members borrowing without asking, taking things that disappeared, the slow erosion of her possessions and peace. December 15th, 2019. Mark took the pearl necklace he gave me for Christmas 20 years ago, said he needed it for business. I won't see it again. March 3rd, 2021. Elaine had copies of my keys made, found out from the hardware store owner. When confronted, she said it was for emergencies. What emergency requires my cottage when I'm in Florida? June 8th, 2023. Leaving the cottage to Lauren. She's the only one who asks permission, who says thank you, who sees me as a person instead of a resource. The last slide was a video I'd taken at June's bedside 2 weeks before she died. Her voice, thin but clear. Lauren, sweetheart, they'll come for it. The cottage, the peace, the solitude, everything they couldn't take while I was watching. Don't let them. That cottage is yours. Free and clear, no guilt, no sharing, no family discounts. It's the only thing in my entire life that I got to choose who received it. I choose you, the one who never took without asking. The presentation ended. The screen went dark. The banquet hall looked like a disaster zone. Abandoned dinners congealed on plates. The anniversary cake tilted, slowly sliding toward collapse. 143 guests had been reduced to maybe 30, most of them filming or frozen in shock. Savannah threw her champagne glass at the screen. It shattered against the white surface, leaving a golden stain. You prepared all this. You've been planning this. Since the day you decided my inheritance was communal property, I said. We're your family. Elaine screamed. No, I said, pulling out my phone to show the last piece of evidence, a text exchange with my therapist that I'd gotten permission to share. Families don't steal. Families don't break in. Families don't call each other useless. You're just relatives. And after tonight, you're relatives with restraining orders. Brianna lunged toward me, but Deputy Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back. She's destroying our family, Brianna sobbed. Margaret's voice cut through from the back. No, dear, you all destroyed it years ago. Lauren's just showing the receipts. I picked up my purse, feeling the weight of my EMT badge inside my real identity, my chosen family at the station, the life I'd built beyond their reach. The cottage locks have been changed to biometric, I announced. The security system feeds directly to the sheriff's office. The property is protected by no trespass orders that the state of Maine will enforce, and if any of you come within 500 feet of my property, I looked directly at my parents, you'll be arrested. Mark stood, his face purple with rage. You're no daughter of mine. Finally, I said, something we agree on. I walked to the podium one final time, pulling the microphone free from its stand. The feedback shrieked, then settled. Every eye in that ruined anniversary party fixed on me, some with hatred, some with shock, a few with what looked like admiration. Before I go, I said, my voice steady as if I was calling out medical stats during a trauma. Let me be crystal clear about what happens next. I pulled out the manila folder I'd kept in reserve, the one Harrison had labeled Final Option. Inside were copies of every document, every screenshot, every piece of evidence, now filed with Portland District Court. Civil suits have been initiated for $32,000 in unreturned loans. Criminal complaints have been filed for attempted breaking and entering. The IRS has been notified about certain discrepancies in gift reporting. I looked directly at Savannah, who'd been claiming the cottage as a business expense on her taxes for 3 years. And Child Protective Services will receive a report about adults encouraging minors to commit burglary. You wouldn't dare, Elaine whispered. I already have. The papers were filed at 4:30 p.m. today, before I even arrived here. I set the old cottage keys on the podium, the ones my family had been using to violate June's privacy for decades. 5 sets, collected from the locksmith who'd made them, who'd been more than happy to provide records when faced with a subpoena. These are museum pieces now, reminders of when you thought boundaries were suggestions and family meant free access to whatever you wanted. Derek stood up, his served papers crumpled in his fist. We'll fight this. Every charge, every claim. Good, I said. I want you to fight it. I want you to pay lawyers $300 an hour to explain why you thought breaking into my house was acceptable. I want you to tell a judge that family should override law. I want you to stand in court and say, on record, that I'm useless to you unless I'm useful. I clicked the presentation remote one last time. A final image appeared, not evidence this time, but a photo. June and me on the cottage porch, taken the summer before she died. She was laughing at something I'd said, her hand on my shoulder, the lighthouse beam sweeping across the dusk behind us. This is what family actually looks like, I said. Someone who saw me for who I was, not what they could extract from me. The room held its breath. Then I spoke the words I'd rehearsed in my apartment mirror, in my car, In my dreams, your access to me is permanently revoked. Your keys to my life, literal and metaphorical, no longer work. And that word you love throwing around, family, it's just biology now. Nothing more. I set down the microphone, letting it thud against the podium. As I walked toward the exit, Deputy Martinez stepped aside with a professional nod. Behind me, chaos erupted, shouting, accusations, the crash of another glass breaking. But I didn't turn around. Margaret caught me at the door, pressing something into my hand. June asked me to give you this when the time was right. It was a letter, June's handwriting on cream paper. My dearest Lauren, if you're reading this, you've finally drawn your line in the sand. I'm proud of you. The cottage isn't just walls and windows. It's a place where no is a complete sentence and peace isn't negotiable. You earned it not through taking, but through giving. Not through demanding, but through asking. Not through entitlement, but through respect. They'll hate you for a while. Let them. Their hatred is less toxic than their false love. The lighthouse will keep blinking steady, reliable, unchanged by storms. Be like that light. All my love. June. I walked out of Seafarer Banquet Hall at 8:47 p.m., my heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown ending. Behind me, I could hear Mark's voice booming about lawsuits, Elaine shrieking about disgrace, Savannah on her phone with her lawyer. But ahead of me was silence. Beautiful, earned, legally enforced silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Security footage from the party has been saved to the cloud. 3 separate news outlets have requested statements. Shall I send them the standard no comment? No. I typed back. Send them the truth. All of it. I drove to the cottage that night, using my new biometric lock that recognized only my fingerprint. Inside, everything was exactly as June had left it, peaceful, intact, mine. The lighthouse beam swept across the walls in its ancient rhythm. 6 seconds of light, 6 seconds of dark, unchanging, unbothered, uncompromised. I sat on the porch where June and I had spent her last good summer, watching the ocean claim and release the shore in endless negotiation. Somewhere behind me, my former family was dealing with legal papers, public humiliation, and the collapse of their carefully constructed mythology. They'd called me useless at that party, laughed at my worthlessness, tried to shame me into submission one last time. Instead, I'd given them the most useful thing I'd ever provided: consequences. The restraining orders would hold. The lawsuits would proceed. The criminal charges would process through the system with mechanical certainty. And I would be here, in the cottage June left me, finally understanding what she'd meant about value versus price. My family had been right about one thing at that party. I did know exactly who I was. I was Lauren Pierce. I saved lives for a living. I owned a cottage by the sea. And I was nobody's doormat anymore. The lighthouse beam swept across the darkness, and I raised June's coffee mug, the one she'd used every morning, the one that still smelled faintly of her Cuban roast, in a toast to the woman who'd given me more than property. She'd given me permission to defend it. Boundaries of mine, I said to the ocean, to the lighthouse, to June's memory. From here are law. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this tale of family drama and sweet revenge. What did you think of Lauren's ultimate stand against her entitled relatives? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best inheritance you can receive is the courage to say no.